Welcome everyone to the second edition of the Knit Wear Test. This is a video series where I like to take a moment to reflect back on my recent knits and give a bit of an update on how I'm really feeling about them now that I've had a chance to wear them and really kind of see how they fare in the real world. So today's video is going to be all about my spring and summer knits, and I've got a lot of thoughts to share. So if it sounds interesting, please go ahead and stick around. Welcome to Good Knits, everyone. For those that are brand new here, I'm Sherry and I am a Canadian expat originally from Calgary, Alberta, and I have been living in Amsterdam for the last 7 years with my husband. If you want even more ways to follow along on my knitting journey, you can go ahead and give me a follow over at Instagram. You can find me there by @GoodKnits. Also, I do tend to be really good about posting on Ravelry, so if you are ever interested in reading more about my projects and knowing how I modified or any project specifics, you can go ahead and add me also on Ravelry, and that is Good Knits by SK. Both those links you can find in my show description if you are interested. If you haven't watched the wear test video that I did for winter back in May, here's just like a little update on what this is all about. So I have noticed that I have a tendency, as I believe most knitters do, to share projects right when we finish them. I tend to gush about them. I'm really happy. Overall, the feelings are good. The vibes are positive, and I'm just excited that after weeks or months of working on something, I finally have it off my needles and I can wear it. Because in the moment that I finish a project, I definitely do feel excited about it, and overall, I really believe that it's going to be a great piece for me. But I think the reality a lot of times is that it just doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't fit properly. The yarn didn't actually, I don't know, hold up like I expected it to. So I started this video series as a way to really provide an honest review once all those warm and fuzzy positive feelings have settled and I've had a chance to really integrate something into my wardrobe. And I think it's also a great way for me to just reflect back and see, how am I actually feeling about things, and have I really learned anything that I can take into my future knits so that I don't keep making the same mistakes and I really do end up with pieces that I'm gonna love. I would say doing this the first time around, I did realize a lot of things that I've carried into my knitting going forward. And I think with each piece, I am getting better and better about making things that I do really enjoy in the end, even if they're not 100% perfect. My goal is to do these videos roughly every 4 to 6 months. So it's sort of going along with the seasons, similar to the seasonal knitting plan videos. So like I said, I did my first video back in May, and that was reflecting back on my winter knit. So it was a lot of sweaters and cardigans, even though I had finished other more summery, spring-related projects also in that time. I didn't include those knits in that video because I didn't feel it was a fair reflection because I hadn't had a chance to wear them yet. So now this video is really looking back at my spring summer knits. Some of these go back all the way to last September, so I've had them off my needles for almost a year. But because I finished them end of season and we had not the greatest weather here in Amsterdam, I didn't have a chance to really wear them. And so you're gonna see those in this video, and that's why those kind of happened so long ago. So if you're interested in hearing more about my sweater and cardigans from the winter, please go back and watch that winter video, and you can expect the next kind of fall winter video probably early 2025. You might also see some items come back within different seasonal videos. So for example, I have my Camisole number 9, which because it's a cami, it is spring summer, I'm going to showcase it today. However, I also do expect that that will be more of a transitional layering piece, so I probably will also update you on how I'm feeling about it when I film my next video, unless my feelings haven't changed at all, in which case you won't see it again. But if I have something new to say, I will bring it back into future videos, and that might happen for things like cardigans, camis, if I feel there's new information to share. In these videos, I also avoid talking about anything that's recently come off my needles. So a few weeks ago, I filmed podcast 19, where I finished the Sabai top that I'm currently wearing by Susanne Müller, as well as a Cumulus Tee and my Farnham tee. Those aren't going to be in this video because I've only had about 3 weeks, maybe 4 to actually wear them. I think I have some initial feelings already, but it hasn't been enough time to give you a proper update. So I'm going to leave those for now, and there's probably a good chance that those will be featured in next year's spring summer video. So in today's episode, I have 7 garments to share, and those are going to include the Cumulus Tee by PetiteKnit, the Tolsta Tee by the Creabea, Cami number 9 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, Blouse number 2 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, SONYA tee from Susanne Müller, the MELIDES dress by Vert, and the MELIDES top by Vert. I'm going to keep the structure of this the same as my past videos. So there's going to be 3 criteria that I go through. How often do I wear it? So what is the frequency of wear that I'm getting from that piece? It's not going to be a perfect science, but is it daily, weekly, monthly, never, etc.? What is my overall satisfaction ranking? So on a scale of 1 to 5, not a perfect science, but 1 being I never wear it, I pretty much have put it in a drawer and forgotten about it. 5 being I love it, I wouldn't change a thing, it is absolutely perfect. So everything will fall within that scale, and I try to share reasons why. And the 3rd criteria is what have I learned? So is there something that I would change about that specific piece to make it something that I would love a bit more? Or did I learn something from that that I'm going to take into future knits so that I don't keep making the same mistake? And there's lots of those. Because I don't want to make this video too long, I really try to avoid going into all the details of construction methods and that kind of thing, or any issues I ran into while knitting the piece. All of that can be found in past podcast episodes. So if there's something that you're specifically looking for, just go ahead and search my past episodes to find those items, and you can hear all about them there. Today is really just going to be about the wearing experience and the learnings. First item on the list is the Cumulus Tee, and this is a pattern by PetiteKnit. I knit it in a size small in Knitting for Olive pure silk in the color Plum Rose. This is a knit that I finished last September and did get a little bit of time to wear before the season ended, but for the most part it just got put in the closet. I've been able to wear this pretty much since the weather started to warm up in early spring. And if I was to pinpoint my frequency on this, I'm going to say it's at least weekly that I wear it. I reach for this item a lot. It's a really beautiful basic t-shirt. Of course, the process to knit this is a bit of a long one. You're on 3mm needles and it's fingering weight yarn, so maybe not the most enjoyable. I personally did like it, but it did take a while for me to make, and that's also why I didn't finish it until last September, because I think it was on my needles for quite a few months. Satisfaction on this piece, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I am really happy with my yarn choice on this. I think the Knitting for Olive pure silk is one of my favorite summer yarns. It's so lightweight. I think it just has a beautiful texture. It's very lightweight on your body, and it really helps cool in the summer, so I don't feel like I overheat in this. I'm also really happy with the color on me. I think this really fits into my seasonal True Autumn palette, and it really just like brightens me up. I feel very good in this piece. It also is enough of a neutral that it does tend to go with multiple things in my wardrobe. Pretty much with brown, navy, cream, whatever it might be, also just basic jeans. So this is a really versatile piece for me, and I've really enjoyed having it in my wardrobe. I actually like this pattern so much that I went ahead and made myself a second one this year. I told myself it was pretty much because I just wanted a simple stockinette project on my needles, and this was an easy one to have going for a while. But also I just really like the fit of it, and so I decided to make it in putty, which is more of a neutral. I do think it's maybe a little bit too cool tone for me. I wish I had kind of warmed up that neutral color a little bit, but I'm very happy with it. Like I said at the intro, I haven't had a chance to wear it a lot. It only came off my needles a few weeks ago, but some slight modifications that I did make based on this one is I lengthened the body of the putty by about 2 centimeters and also omitted the decreases that happen in the bottom bind off and the and the I-cord on the sleeves, I do definitely feel the little bit of tightness that happens. It's not the worst thing, but I wanted to try omitting and see how I felt because I noticed that a lot of people on Ravelry mentioned that in their project notes. I don't know exactly how I feel about the modifications that I made yet. I think I might actually be a little bit happier with this one in terms of length and final fit, but the changes are so minor that I don't know if it makes a huge difference. So I'm really happy with both. I think I would maybe keep the length a bit shorter on this because the pure silk does tend to grow in length and width as you're wearing it. So I think over time this will also just continue to stretch a little bit. I think maybe the only thing with the Cumulus Tee that I would modify a little bit if I made this another time, and I don't know how I would do it, is I would love to see the V here come a little bit lower. I find this just sits at a really awkward point on my chest. It still looks great. It's not a huge deal, but when I think about this top, I'm always like, oh, I just wish it was a tiny bit deeper. Still, that doesn't change my rating. For me, it's a 5 out of 5. I'm very, very happy with this piece. Moving on is the Tolsta Tee by the Creabea, also known as Rebecca Clow. And this was knit on Knitting for Olive cotton merino in the color lamb gray, and I knit it in a size 2-3. So she gave instructions within the pattern that if you were between sizes, you wanted a bit more positive ease, especially within the chest, you could do I believe I cast on for the size 2, but did the increases for the size 3. So I think overall positive ease on this turned out pretty well. I'm glad that I made that modification, or it probably would have been way too tight on me. Now, I have a lot to say on this one. So I would say frequency, I finished this last August. It does hold a special place in my heart because this is actually the top that I wore in my very first podcast episode when I joined YouTube. So I do reflect fondly back on that, and I'm really proud of it. But in terms of frequency, this is a never wear for me. I have had ample opportunity this spring, summer, now that the weather has been nicer, and where I, wear my Cumulus Tee that I finish roughly the same time frame. I wear that weekly. This is just a piece that isn't working for me. So overall satisfaction on this is a 2. And I made it a 2 and not a 1 because I think there are some really good things about this. In general, I really, really like the pattern. I think the Tolsta Tee is great. It comes in a fingering and DK weight version. There's multiple modifications. I think there's some really interesting things that other knitters have done and you can see in their project notes. So even for this one, for example, I followed Kelly from Coco and Knits project notes on Ravelry. She did a black and a white version, like 2 separate pieces with this eyelet. She kind of incorporated it into the design. I really, really liked it on her. But when it comes to this pattern on me, it's just not working. And I think if I had done a just straight stockinette Tolsta Tee, I would be really happy with it as a pattern. Where I went wrong is I think this design is not as flattering on me as it could be. I decided to increase the length of the stockinette panels from what Kelly had done in the hopes that it would be long enough to cover my bust once blocked. You can see here, that is definitely not happening. It is just too short, so then it's cutting me at a really, really weird place with the size of my bust. And I think just in general, because of the size of the panels and that they look like stripes, I feel that it's making me look a little bit wider. Other people might not see that. That might be me being hard on myself. But regardless, that's what I see when I look at myself in it. And so it's just not working for me. I don't think it's the best way that I could have modified this pattern to make me feel the best in it. My second issue with what I did is I just really picked the wrong color. So I had already done my color analysis with a company here in Amsterdam called Fashion to Repeat. They were amazing. but for some reason I kept thinking gray was still within my color palette, and I've since realized at least this shade of gray really is not. I had the exact same issue with my Salty Day sweater, which I made end of last year, and gave the same feedback in my last wear test video that that gray just really is not working for me. And even if that sweater had fit me perfectly, which it doesn't, I think I still wouldn't have been happy wearing it because of the color. And they're very similar in tone. So I just find when I put this on, and even when I look back at the pictures I took right after I finished it last year, it really washes me out. It does absolutely nothing for my complexion, and that's not the worst thing. I don't mind wearing things sometimes that don't look the best, but I really tried to put this piece on, and every time I would put it on to leave the house, I just felt a little bit frumpy and like my skin went a tiny bit gray as well. And so if I don't feel good in something, it's not really something I want to leave the house in. So it's a shame because I think there was a lot of things going for this pattern, and had I just made different decisions, it would have been fine. So some key learnings: I'm going to avoid this gray at all costs in the future, unless maybe it is paired with a different color that does work a little bit better for me. I am going to be very careful about these eyelet stripe patterns and probably avoid them entirely because I'm just not sure it's the best look on me and the shape of my body. But I also learned that I really like the Knitting for Olive cotton merino yarn. I think it's a great option. It is fingering weight, so I held it double to make this DK weight version shirt. And I think I would definitely do that again in the future. The cotton merino has a pretty good color palette. It's a great summer yarn. I definitely prefer the final feel of this compared to other DK weight cotton yarns that I've used, and I'll get into that in a second. So I think yarn-wise, great. Definitely want to use that again, just maybe for a specific fingering weight project, because holding this double would also get a little bit expensive quite quickly. So I think in a few previous videos, in the video where I showed all my spring summer knits that I've ever made, somebody had commented at one point asking, well, why do you keep this piece if you never wear it? Shouldn't you frog it and make something else? As I've said about the color, I don't think frogging makes sense for me here because I just don't want to make another piece in this color. But now that I filmed this wear test video, which is what I was holding out for, I want to say to all of you that if you happen to really like this design and you fit a size between 2-3 of the Tolsta Tee, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to send this to somebody that wants it, either in its current state, or if you just want the yarn and you're willing to go through the whole process of frogging it, also happy to send it to you for that purpose. So just go ahead and reach out to me and we can figure out how to get that to you. Because I would like this to go to a good home. I don't like that it's just sitting in my closet right now with no purpose. And I know that there's nothing that I could do to modify this to change how I feel about it. So I want to send it to somebody that will use it in its current state or for the yarn, and that would make me really happy. Third top is Cami number 9, or Camisole number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and I knit this in a size small, and the yarn is, again, Knitting for Olive. I definitely had a little bit of a period here where I only knit with Knitting for Olive, and this is their Merino yarn, which is a wool, and is knit in the color bottle green. On this one, I would say frequency-wise, I would call it bi-weekly. Wearing this top is very dependent on the weather. If it's too cold, I don't really want to wear it on its own because it's sleeveless, but then the yarn itself is quite warming, so the merino is nice for that. But then when it gets above a certain temperature, like 25, suddenly it's too warm to wear merino, and therefore I don't want to put it on my body. So there's kind of this sweet spot between 20 to 25 degrees Celsius where it's great and I wear it all the time. So I wore it quite a bit on my trip to Sicily back in May. It's a little bit finicky as a summer knit, and that's okay because with this one I did knit it with more the intention of it being a layering piece in fall winter, so with blazers, under cardigans. So I think this is also a piece where you're probably going to see it come back in a future wear test video, because I will determine if I actually do wear it as a layering piece. I say that now, but maybe I won't. But I think also I intentionally chose this darker green with the hope that I would wear it in the cooler months. The satisfaction score from 1 to 5, I am giving this a 3.5. And I feel like maybe half points are a little bit unfair because it's like very wishy-washy. Do I love it? Do I not? But for me, it's a solid 3.5. I love the design of this top. I think my favorite things Knitwear did such a good job with all the finishing details. It looks so polished. It really looks like a commercial knit. So something that I would actually go buy in store with all the like machine-made details, basically. That's how I feel this looks. It looks very polished. The only thing here is those finishing details, which are so amazing and great and really make the pattern unique, are also what can really kill the final look. So I gave this a 3.5 because I think my execution on this is not the best that it could be. So if we go into kind of the learnings, well, for one, I knit this on the wrong needle size. So I accidentally did it on 3.25 instead of 3, which ended up being actually very good because I think 3mm needles would have made the negative ease too much. This is meant to have, I forget how much, but I want to say 5 to 10 centimeters of negative ease. I don't think that quite works on me because with my bust being larger than kind of the rest of my proportions, what ended up happening is it stretches in the bust and then it reduces the length, and overall it's just feeling a little bit tight. So I'm actually really glad that I used the wrong needle size. I think if I were to knit this again, I would actually knit a size medium on the 3mm needles. Then we get to the folded hem, which was, for me, really, really difficult to knit. I really struggled with that, and I do find it tightens up the bottom of the piece a lot. So when I'm trying to get it over my head and over my bust, it's really uncomfortable. Like I have to kind of slither into it a little bit. So I don't love that. But where my real issue comes with my execution of this is the finishing details. So I'll insert some close-ups, but I just did a really sloppy job. I was doing it on the train. I had really put off doing these finishing details because I felt like they were going to take forever. I did one armhole and kind of just blew through it. Then I did the neckline. Was a little bit cleaner, and then on the third sleeve, I think, or armhole, I think I finally nailed it and really was a lot more precise because I realized what a big difference it made. But at that point, I didn't want to go back and correct all the other ones. So when I wear this, I do notice all those little details that aren't quite perfect. I think also in blocking, I did get the length that I wanted, but as I wear it and it's starting to stretch out widthwise, like I mentioned, it is shrinking up a lot in length. So it is just that tiny bit too short where it's not really tucking into things, and I always have a little bit of skin showing, which I don't personally feel that comfortable with. I would make this top again 100% if I get up the courage to actually go through the process of it. I definitely like it on me. I think it looks like a really beautiful piece, but I really noticed those little details that I didn't quite perfect. I also think if I made it again, I would maybe just omit the folded hem because my hope would be that it's just always tucked in which case, why bother doing a folded hem if nobody's gonna see it? I'm just not sure what I would replace it with. So if you've made this cami before, or if you just know of a great alternative to a folded hem, what would that be? I think an I-cord would look a little bit too casual on this. I don't really want to do a ribbed hem. So is there maybe another option that you think would look a little bit clean and more of that retail look without doing the full folded hem? Because if I recall, it's 300 something stitches, and that folded hem was just the worst part of this piece for me. I ended up having to rip it out and redo it again. and it took me, I think, like half a day to a whole day to do it. And then I would definitely be much more careful on the trim details next time. And I think that would already make such a big difference in my feeling on this piece. So probably for next season, I will, or not next season, next year, I think I will put this back on the list as a consideration to make. Maybe not in a full merino because it does make it a little bit trickier. I would maybe make a version, maybe in the cotton merino because it's fingering, so that I could actually wear it a bit more in the summer, even when the weather's hotter. I like having the little bit of merino in it, but maybe not full merino. I also do notice with the merino, which makes sense, the yarn is pilling a little bit. So kind of the first time I wore it, it did pill, and I've had to do a little bit of maintenance on this. Not the end of the world. That's, I think, the reality of most merino yarns. But if I had done it in a cotton merino, I don't think I'd be having that maintenance that I would need to do. One other learning, I would be very careful with my yarn joins. So I believe I was doing a weft clasp join here where you fold your yarns together and then you're kind of working with two strands. And I find on fingering yarn, I've stopped doing that because it does, when you double up the yarn, even for only a few stitches, you can always tell exactly where you did it because the yarn is just so thin and there's no mohair or anything that is distracting from that. So I do a different join now where I'm only ever using a single strand of yarn at a time. But I do notice exactly where I did those joins on this one, and it drives me a little bit crazy. This also has been a really big hit on Instagram. I think every time I post this top, it is my most popular Instagram post that month. So it seems to be a fan favorite, and yeah, I can see why. I think this is a great pattern. Everybody should have one. Just maybe be a little bit careful with those details. That brings me to blouse number 2 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I also knit this in a size small, and it is made in Drops design cotton merino in the color 08 Marine Blue. Okay, let's talk about this one because I definitely have thoughts. Frequency is never. Literally never. So I finished this piece as part of the knit along that I did in an effort to motivate myself to finish this. I was, when I was making it, very, very excited. I love the way that the pattern was looking on other people. I think the pattern design photos really motivated me to make it. She looked great in it, also in a very similar color. And just the reality of this piece is it's not for me. So I finished it, got it off my needles. I wore it out the next day, felt really uncomfortable in it, and put it into a drawer. I think I featured it on a podcast recently, but that would be the only other time that I wore it. So it's left this apartment once, and other than that, I've never taken it out. So yeah. Let's talk about that. So satisfaction score for me, this is the lowest that I've given any of my knits in these videos, and that is a 1. Basically everything about this is a fail, and it's not to do with the pattern design. I think she made a beautiful design. It really intrigued me. I wanted to knit it, but just the reality of this piece on me is a no. So I don't like the overall fit on me. I think like these kind of, they're not bell sleeves because they're straight, but they look like it. Doesn't work for me. I think the yarn, this Drops cotton merino, I'm just not a big fan of. It's split a lot, it feels heavy. I don't enjoy wearing it on my body. I also think this blue is just a little bit too, not quite royal blue, but it's too bright of a blue. I was really hoping for more of a deep navy, but this was the only color that they had. And just like the overall style, I've realized is too bohemian for me. So that is really a learning. I think this whole eyelet look, big sleeves, kind of oversized, it's never worked for me. So even in retail, when there was a whole moment where bohemian was all the rage and everything in stores was this bohemian festival look, I don't think I bought anything that year in retail because nothing suited me. And I didn't really get that vibe just looking at the pattern photos of this, but finishing it and wearing it now, that is how I feel in it. So it feels, yeah, too bohemian for me, and not trying to say that as an insult. It's just, I don't know if it's the eyelets mixed with the pearls here. There's just something about this pattern, like the overall stitch pattern definition, that I'm not a big fan of on me. So I think it's a good learning too, because in my, I think it was the spring knitting plans video, I had mentioned I wanted to do some sort of eyelet design kind of all over sweater, and I'm realizing maybe I need to give it another chance. I'm realizing I think in a sweater form, that's not the direction I should head. I don't think it's really for me. I don't think it'll work. Probably also, if I look at the Tolsta Tee, that's also eyelets. I'm not really loving it. So maybe there's something there I need to listen to a bit more. I think eyelets in a tank top work. It's a little bit less fabric. It feels less heavy and overwhelming. But at least when it comes to long sleeve and maybe t-shirts, it's not a look that I really want to continue making for myself, and I think I just need to accept that. It looks great on other people, but it's not working for me. So it's a shame because this top really did take me quite a while. I was down to the wire during my make-along to get this done, and I was really hoping, even as I was making it and finishing the details, I had really good intentions of wearing it. I felt good about it. And then just when I put it on, especially because I made the sleeves a bit too short due to some stupid issues that I had with accidentally shortening one sleeve accidentally, and then I had to go shorten the other one because I didn't have enough yarn. Anyway, long story short, the sleeves are too short, which also isn't helping the overall look, but I don't love the piece enough to go back in and fix that because it's not going to change my overall perception of it. So yeah, that is blouse number 2. It's a shame. I hate giving a piece a 1. It's not the design. The pattern's written really clearly. I just learned a lot in this process for what really works for me and what I like, and this is not it. I also just think with this DK weight yarn and the long sleeves, and because this feels so heavy, it's a very difficult piece to wear. Because of the eyelets and that, you're not gonna wear it when it's really cold, but then when it's too hot out, like even right now I'm sitting here in 20-degree weather and I'm too hot in this piece. So I can't quite find the right I can't quite find the right temperature to actually even wear it at. So similar to the Tolsta Tee, if somebody out there is really wanting a blouse number 2 in a size small, you like the color of this, you think it fits your style a bit more, please reach out. I'm happy to send this to somebody if you want the yarn or the garment. Because yeah, I am never gonna wear this, and like with the Tolsta, it's just sitting there collecting dust, and no knit should feel that way. I want all my knits to feel like they are loved, and yeah, it's not going to happen with this one. So reach out if you want to do something with this. Here we have the SONYA Tee by Susanne Müller, or also known as Polystrick on Instagram. I knit this in a size small, and the yarn is Gerpard Garn Wild and Soft in the color 146, color 146. I think it's called Cafe Creme or Coffee Cream. This is a real winner for me. In terms of frequency, I am gonna go ahead and say I wear this multiple times a week. Ever since it's been off my needles, I think in May or June, I have worn this constantly. I absolutely love it. So in terms of satisfaction score, it's a 5 out of 5. It's the second piece on this list that has a 5. There is not a single thing that I would change about it. So with the Cumulus, there was like maybe some small modifications, some slight things that I would maybe not be 100% happy with. But when it comes to this t-shirt, I love everything about it. So I love that it's such a basic tee with all these tiny little special details, like the stripe in the back. I think the way that she does the trim on the body, so with this like raised pearl bump, also the side seam, so the faux side seam, it's just a really special design without being overly complicated to make. And then the yarn itself, I am completely in love with the Wild and Soft. I was happy to branch out from Knitting for Olive, find a new summer yarn, and that is I believe it's 60% merino, 40% Tussa silk, and it's great. And I love the color of this. I love the overall drape of the piece on me. I think the ease is perfect. So yeah, there is nothing that I would change, and I think my main learning from this is I will 100% make this tee for myself again. It's on my list for next summer. I might even start one earlier so that I can just have a stockinette piece on my needles. And I think I would actually just go ahead and make it again in the Gerpard Garn Wild and Soft, maybe in more of a burnt orange color. I think when you find something that works, it's kind of nice to have multiples and be able to wear it in a few different colors. The yarn that she calls for is actually the BC Garn, I think Bio Balance, which I felt that before. It feels a little bit heavier and a little bit more rustic almost, and I'm not 100% sure what the blend is, but I think this Wild and Soft works really nice. It also has a little bit of a texture to it, so it just gives a really nice polished look. And honestly, like, I've been doing a lot of job interviews this year in the last few months, and this is always the shirt that I wear when I want to feel confident in an interview. I just think it makes me feel really good. I don't feel too dressed up, and I really want to wear a knit that I've made. And this is one of those pieces, I think similar to Cami number 9, where people don't immediately think, oh, it's something that you made for yourself. I think it just really looks like a piece that you would buy and something that anybody would wear. I really use this as my special feel-good top, and I'm gonna be really sad when the weather cools down and I can't really wear it anymore. Almost at the finish line. Second last piece is the MELIDES dress by Vert. This is not so much knit in a specific size, but let's call it size 4 or 5 because all my measurements were in those two categories. But this is a tailored dress, so it is basically kind of made to measure, tailored fit. So it could end up in multiple sizes at each point in your body for measurements. I knit this in Knitting for Olive, so we're back to Knitting for Olive. Pure silk in the color Deep Petroleum Blue. I have done a whole video series on this. I've talked about this dress ad nauseum, and I'm sure everybody is a little bit sick of hearing about it. But frequency for this dress, I have worn it only on vacation. So I am okay with that because I really knit this dress specifically for my trip to Sicily. I wanted a vacation dress. I wanted to be able to wear this in Italy and just really get those beautiful pictures and feel good in a hand knit dress, the first one that I've ever made for myself. So I never really made this with the intention of it being something that I was going to wear on a weekly or monthly basis. I could wear it in Amsterdam. The weather's been nice enough, but it doesn't really feel like an Amsterdam style dress. I don't know how to describe that. It's a very casual city. It is a casual dress, but for some reason I just feel a little bit more elevated in this piece. In Sicily I did wear it twice, so I wore it out on a day in Taormina and got lots of great photos and video, and then I wore it on a date with my husband at the end of our trip in Cefalù. And I'm really, really happy with it. Like, overall satisfaction score, I put it as a 4.5. It's not a 5 for me because I think there are some things that I would change, but it's a 4.5 because I'm just so proud of myself for making this, and I have nothing but good feelings. And you know, I think Ines from Vert is a wonderful designer. This is a beautiful pattern. She was so helpful as I was making it. That just gave me a really good feeling about it. I think the pure silk works up really well in a dress. Part of the points off are it is a little bit see-through. I think I knit this on 3.25 millimeter needles instead of the 3, so it is a little bit more of an open gauge, and I definitely notice when I'm wearing it, you can kind of see my undergarments a little bit, and at the bottom, if the sun is shining through, you can see through the bottom of the dress. So I don't love that, but it's not the end of the world. And I think for me, part of my half a star off on this is I didn't, similar to Cami number 9, I didn't pay enough attention to the finishing details. And so now that it's off my needles, I really notice that. But there was a good reason to not pay attention to the details, and that was simply because I was down to the wire. I was literally the day before my trip on the floor trying to sew down these buttons, trying to finish the I-cord finishing, and I just didn't have any time to spend on it. I think, you know, there's a bust line where it doesn't line up perfectly. The buttons aren't 100% even all the way down, and I notice it when I'm wearing it. I wish I had bought a bigger crochet hook so that the, not the I-cord finishing, the button band reinforcements didn't scrunch in the material as much as they did. So there's all these like finish polishing details that I wish I had just taken a little bit more care to do. But I think the biggest learning from this entire piece is I don't work well under a deadline. I don't like the pressure of having to finish something. In the end, I made this dress, this whole dress, on 3.25 millimeter needles, fingering weight yarn, knit flat in 2 months, not even. So I was really down to the wire. I really felt that pressure to get it done, and I ended up kind of hating the process by the end, and it just wanted it done. I wanted to have it for my trip, and therefore I didn't take as much care as I would have if I didn't have that pressure. So that's a big learning for me. I've really tried now to take my time on pieces, knit without that deadline and overwhelming feeling of I need to do something by a certain day. So I would say that's actually the biggest learning, and 100% for me, I will make another dress or skirt in the future, and I will have more to share on that in my fall knitting plans. I loved working on this. I loved having the final piece. I love having the pictures, and just I felt so good about this. And I also really like that I seem to have inspired some of the rest of you to make this dress. Hopefully I demystified the scariness of it and knitting flat. I think everybody that's knit it so far has been really, really happy with it. So I feel the same. Of course, there's a few small things that I would change, but yeah, it's a beautiful project, and I am just so over the moon happy with myself for having made it and like really buckled down and put the effort into it. And also just like taken on the challenge for myself, because this really was a challenge. I struggled so much at different parts of this pattern, including the cast on. I wanted to give up, and it just really showed me that I can persevere and do something when I put my mind to it. It's a piece that I'm immensely proud of myself for, and I don't know, maybe I should rate it a 5, but let's call it a 4.5. And the final piece on the list is the MELIDES top, also by Vert knit, obviously. Also knitting for Olive Pure Silk, the color Dusty Artichoke. So I decided to make the top of this because I really, really like the way that the dress fit. I like that it was reversible front and back, and that is also how this top works. You can wear it either with the square neck or the V-neck at the front, and I just really like the versatility of that. So I decided, since I just finished the dress, this would be my holiday cast on for Sicily, and because I already knew a lot of the techniques, then I figured it'd be a pretty easy knit for myself. So frequency wise, since I've had this off my needles in early June, I wear it as long as the weather cooperates and it's warm enough, multiple times a week. So similar to my SONYA tee, this is a piece that I wear a lot. I am really, really happy with it in terms of overall satisfaction score. I'm gonna say I put 3.5 on my list but I was really bouncing back and forth between 3.5 and 4 on this because there are so many positives to this top. I think just like an overall design and versatility, yarn choice was great, but I put it as a 3.5 because one, my gauge ended up being a bit off, so it doesn't fit exactly as I would like. And this is maybe the perfect example of why I do these wear test videos, because as I've had an opportunity to wear this more, my love of it is going down a little bit because the yarn is stretching a bit. So then the fit is changing over time. And I realized I forgot to mention the size for this. So I knit this in a size 4. And I think because my gauge was a tiny bit off, it ended up slightly wider than I would have liked. And also my row gauge ended up not being correct. So I put in my gauge from the MELIDES dress pattern, and this is also one where she will tell you the modifications if your row gauge doesn't match the pattern. So I put in my row gauge, I did all the measurements and knit to the rows that she had recommended, but that ended up being a little bit too short. So this top ended up shorter than I would have liked, which also then put the bust darts a little bit too high, so they don't sit on my body where they should. So in blocking, I had to do a lot of stretching to try to get this top to the length that I wanted it to be. I was hoping it would be closer to 49, and I think I ended up at 46 or 47 centimeters. So I think the overall fit in general is not quite working for me, and you can see it also like kind of is starting to fall down a little bit. I think it could have been a little bit more negative ease, so I would maybe knit a size 3 or just make sure that I gauge swatch with the specific yarn that I'm using and gauge swatch in the round, which I don't usually do. Because yeah, even though this was pure silk again, and I had done all that gauge swatching for my MELIDES dress, that was flat. It was on the deep petroleum yarn, and for some reason the dusty artichoke did feel slightly different than the deep petroleum yarn. So I don't know what happened there, but maybe it was just the specific balls that I got. I think in this case, I would have been better to swatch, but I just wanted to cast on something quickly for vacation. So that's fine. I think the other thing that brings the score down for me on this one is the color. So the pure silk, if you've ever looked at the Knitting for Olive, it has a lot of colors, but not necessarily a lot of like deep colors, which is more what I was looking for. So it didn't quite have a green that I was gravitating towards other than the olive, and that didn't feel summery enough for me. So I opted to go with this dusty artichoke, knowing it was maybe a little bit too light. And I think seeing it now, it skews a little bit more light gray. It has that undertone, and I think it's not quite the same feeling as the Tolsta Tee or the Salty Day sweater for me, but it's heading in that direction of it just isn't maybe the best color choice on me. So I do like it and I wear it a lot. Like I said, I wear this top multiple times a week. I will continue to do that, but I don't think the color is the best choice that I could have made. So this is probably a top that I would make again with those gauge modifications, potentially with a size change to a size 3 instead of 4. And then also just pick a color that's maybe a little bit more within my autumn color palette. And maybe also if I made it again, I would just veer away from the Knitting for Olive pure silk and try making this in a completely different material. I'm not sure which, but maybe more of a cotton, and see if I like that a bit more. Because I do feel like the pure silk maybe is not the best yarn choice for this specific top. I think it could benefit maybe from a little bit more structure and a little bit more stitch definition. I think if I can sum up a few key learnings that I've had throughout this last season of knitting, I think definitely color plays a big part in my overall satisfaction, but also I really tend to gravitate towards more classic fit pieces like the Cami number 9 and SONYA Tee, and really those pieces that have special details even though they're quite a basic item. And so I think bringing more of that into especially my winter knits, really considering how do I kind of have these elevated basics, I think that will make me really happy with the pieces that I make. And I think a big one for me too is overall length. So I think You know, I mentioned it on the Cumulus Tee, this MELIDES top, the sleeve length of my blouse number 2. What else? Oh, and then my sabai top also ended up being too short. I think in general, I just have a real issue. Oh, my cami number 9 is too short. I just have an overall real issue with the length of garments and sleeves. And so it's something that I really need to work on, because it was something I realized in the Wear Test winter edition as well. My sleeve lengths are always too short. So length is a big one that I need to focus on more. So classic fits with special details, length, and color, I think are main learnings that I'm going to take into my future knits. That brings me to the end of the episode. I really loved making this second edition of the Wear Test video. I think it's so much fun to go back and reflect on my past knits and really consider, okay, how satisfied am I with them? Am I really wearing them? What would I change? It's just a really enjoyable process. I really looked forward to making this video. I tried to put a lot of time into preparing for it, because I got feedback last time that sometimes I'd forget the yarn, or it maybe was missing information that you guys would have liked to know from the patterns or the experience. So I hope I've covered more of that this time. I know somebody had also asked in the last episode if I could share more about how I'm styling my knits. I had every intention of taking more pictures and videos of me wearing these pieces, but honestly, it was just really hard to keep up with. So I will try to maybe incorporate more of that in the future episode, but I also feel like I'm not the best at styling. It's something that I'm trying to get a little bit better about, but I feel like there's so much that I could improve in that area. And so maybe it's also, maybe if I say that I will show how I'm styling them, I will put more effort into how I actually style them, so that I want to share that. So maybe in future episodes, I'll do more of that. If there's anything that you feel I was missing in terms of content from this that you would love to know, just go ahead and drop a comment. I'm happy to answer more questions. If there's any specifics on pieces that you've seen here, or just general thoughts that you think I am missing that would really help you in deciding if this is a piece you want to make, or maybe you just need more details about what I've learned, I'm always happy to answer questions. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you all being here. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed putting it together. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and comment, but also go ahead and subscribe and turn on those bell notifications. I post new podcast episodes roughly every 2 to 3 weeks, and try to sprinkle in content like this whenever I have new ideas and time to film. So the next video I have coming up will also be my fall knitting plans, which I'm really excited to share. I've got lots of ideas for things I want to make, but probably not nearly enough time to actually make them, but lots of inspiration that I want to share with you all. So thanks so much for being here today. This was a ton of fun, and I will see you in the next episode.